Hi, welcome to another episode of Just Informed News. I'm your host, Craig. Thanks for joining me. We have a lot of very important information to get through today. Here in this episode, we're going to go through all the major news stories that have been breaking from yesterday to today since last episode. I hope you guys enjoyed yesterday's episode. Today, we're going to be jumping in with some major stories talking about Biden administration creating a disinformation governance board, i.e., I guess the thought police. As if it wasn't bad enough that big tech is trying to shut down free speech in America, you have now the Biden regime, the illegitimate, fraudulent Biden regime, trying to crack down on free speech in America. Yeah, we're going to cover that. Plus, we're going to look at a bunch of other news stories, including some very interesting topics that you're going to want to stick around to hear. There's a bunch of stuff we're going to get through, so let's just jump right into it. Today, we're starting here. Biden administration creates disinformation governance board under DHS, of course, Homeland Security, to fight misinformation. So this is the modern iteration of the thought police from Orwell's 1984. And here it is. It says the Department of Homeland Security is setting up a new board designed to counter misinformation related to Homeland Security with a focus specifically on Russia and irregular migration. The board will be called the Disinformation Governance Board and will be headed by Executive Director Nina Jankowicz. Oh, here's some interesting information we're going to keep going into. Speaking with House Appropriations Subcommittee on Wednesday afternoon, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said, "Our Undersecretary for Policy, Rob Silvers, is co-chair with our Principal Deputy General Counsel, Jennifer Gaskell, in leading a just recently constituted Misinformation, Disinformation Governance Board." So the goal is to bring the resources of the department together to address this threat. Oh, the threat of free speech. That's right. Oh, Jankowicz has a few interesting tweets she's put out before. She was also overseeing Russia and Belarus programs at the National Democratic Institute. She announced via the new board via Twitter, saying they're going to do this here on Twitter. It says, going on, Jankowicz previously said that she was concerned that Twitter had determined early in 2022 to stop limiting speech from users about the 2020 presidential election, saying that, quote, "Considering the long-term damage these lies do to our democracy," she said, quote, "dismayed about this decision." Yeah, you can see it right here where they reported that Twitter said they will quit taking action against lies about 2020 election, to which she responded, that's going to cause long-term damage what these lies do. So, I mean, you guys can see this stuff for yourself, right? We can read through the full story, but at the end of the day, you got to remember, Jankowicz is a former advisor to the Ukrainian government, of all places, under a Fulbright Clinton fellowship. Yeah, that's a true story. There's a bunch more information you can get out there, but free speech versus censorship framing is a false dichotomy, according to her. One of the last parts of this article, it's her own speech. She says, free speech versus censorship framing is a false dichotomy. Oh, really? So what they're trying to do now is say they're going to go after misinformation and disinformation. Well, what could that possibly mean? Could that mean anybody who speaks out against the fraudulent, stolen 2020 election and the deep state that's running this whole sham? I've come to a point now where I'm not only fully convinced that the election was 100% stolen by Joe Biden and his criminally corrupt, backers in the DNC, and the globalists that back them through the deep state. But I'm also fully convinced that our government has failed on every level you can imagine. And not only have they failed, they've intentionally failed with the direct purpose being to destroy this country. That's the only thing one could come to the conclusion of as we see things unfold day by day, getting worse and worse and worse in this satanically driven administration that is hell-bent on the full-scale destruction of America. I mean, at this point, what else could one infer? I mean, they've opened up our borders and let the illegals invade, and they tell us it's not happening. They're going to end Title 42 to increase the invasion even further. You have Joe Biden pushing us into a nuclear war with Russia, while at the same time, his son was funding the creation through our Department of Defense of these bioweapon labs in Ukraine, which were God knows, or being used for God knows what, making pathogens that are ethnically, targeted, meaning Caucasian people will be targeted with these viruses because these people are sick psychopaths. And, you can go down the line. They spied on Trump. They tried to rig the 2016 election. They've used the fake news to basically put out their own disinformation and propaganda on a daily basis. They lie regularly with impunity without ever even having the consideration of having to be held accountable for their lies that they spread on a regular basis. These people have betrayed the American people. They're treasonous in their conduct, and they should be brought on trial. And, if the verdict is what I think it would be, they should be found guilty, and they should be brought and thrown in prison for a long time, if you ask me, because these people are so dangerous. This is how you get full-scale communism and authoritarianism. Oh, we're going to go after misinformation and disinformation for homeland security. Well, wait, does the First Amendment of the Constitution not exist anymore? Or has it just been diluted so much by the countless ways that our government has completely gone against it that at this point it just doesn't even matter? They don't care about us. They don't care about we the people. They are the enemy of the people. Everybody involved in this is the enemy of the people, from Jankowicz down, right? And Mayorkas and the rest, the fraudulent, corrupt. These people weren't even elected, and they're trying to dictate what we can and can't say. These people failed. They used the intelligence agency. The CIA fixed the election for them. And now they're trying to tell us that they're gonna go after misinformation about what? The way that the intelligence agency fixed the 2020 election and tried to fix the 2016 election to help their deep state puppet candidates get control of this country, which now it seems they have taken control. Now, I mean, we the people, what options do we have? It's like Joe Biden said, we don't have nukes and fighter jets. What are we going to do? We're basically helpless, right? I doubt that, but that's what they want us to believe. But here are some things that they don't want us to talk about, right? The Misinformation Governance Board is going to be having serious talks about, silencing further. And don't even forget the fact that they use big tech, the big tech companies that they created through DARPA and other intelligence agency programs like Facebook and Twitter and the rest, right? What is Twitter? Deep Dream. Go look it up. What is Project Deep Dream? That's a good rabbit hole if you want to jump down it. What is LifeLog? What was LifeLog? Was that a DARPA-funded project that ended on the same day that Facebook was incorporated? Oh, so they wanted to create these social media networks where we voluntarily give our own personal information so that they can track us and make profiles about us and digitally have us, completely surveilled by our own, allowing it to happen, voluntarily jumping on board. But what are the things they don't want us talking about? Here's just one example of a dozen stories I could pull up. I'll pull up a few. Former AG Barr stopped investigations into trailer load of 288,000 ballots into Pennsylvania from New York in 2020 election. Barr refused to provide whistleblower protection, and now the USPS won't provide investigation report. What gives? You guys remember this story? The truck driver who said he was driving completed ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. 288,000? You guys remember all this happened? They did steal the election. We know that. We know it pretty much for a fact at this point that they stole the 2020 election. These are criminals. These are treasonous, corrupt criminals who should be brought up on trial and should be thrown in prison for the rest of their lives if a jury finds them guilty and the judge, sentences them as such. Because I have no time for these people who are trying to destroy this country and the ones who think they can get away with it without even having the remote possibility of having any consequence of their actions. But I mean, that's just one example. And we can go through a bunch of other examples, but I want to go through one thing is it's all about divide and conquer, right? Remember that. How are they dividing us? So they're dividing us along all these different lines. They've put us against each other. The COVID people against the people who believe it's a hoax or know it's a hoax. The vaccine people versus the people who are saying these vaccines are dangerous and deadly and you probably shouldn't take them. And the mass people. This is the best one. Here's the psychology of mass. This is what they do to us. This is how they've Clower Piven strategized the destruction of America here. However you want to consider it. It says the psychology of mass. Let's read this. During operative conditioning training soldiers, we have learned that if an enemy combatant looks different than the soldier, it's 40% easier for the soldier to not feel things like empathy, compassion, fear, etc. If the combatant has a face covering, it is 60% on average more difficult to connect with a person. This has nothing to do with killing training. It's just the way human brains work. So over a long period of time, i.e. 1 to 5 years, mass will alter our ways of viewing each other in a biological sense. my son's generation, if we all continue to use face coverings, we will be 50% more prone to violence, 50% less empathetic, and it will dehumanize their peers by 50%. So I bring that up in the beginning with the disinformation board and all that stuff to draw you this picture of where we're at and where we're heading. See, they've used all these psychological manipulations and tactics to basically weaponize their information, their fake, false, misleading propaganda information. And then they've weaponized these policies like face masks to make us more susceptible to wanting to hurt each other, more easily pushed into wanting to hurt each other. We're going to get into a story later here about how the Black Lives Matter terrorist organization that has produced more terrorist attacks over the last year than, anything you could imagine over the last, besides maybe like us going into the Middle East. And even then, a lot of those aren't even as real as they want to sell it to you. But the fact of the matter is they want us to hurt each other. They want us to look at each other in a dehumanizing way so that we have no empathy or compassion for one another, so that then we will continue to fight one another and we will never look beyond each other. We always are going to be looking at each other, blaming the other for what this has done. See, I don't blame the leftists for the most part. And I know a lot of you are going to be like, what? That's crazy. But hear me out. They're being manipulated in a way that they can't even understand or fathom. And nobody's helped break them out of that conditioning that they're in. And the moment we started becoming powerful with our voices on social media and other things, then boom, they nuked us out of existence. I mean, I've been banned from every platform. For what? What did I do? Because I used my free speech to talk about things that they didn't want me to talk about, because I was opening people's minds to things that previously they had never considered. And I'm not just talking about myself. Many others have been in the same place that I'm at. So now they've tried to financially destroy me. They've tried to put me out of the conversation altogether. They've done everything they can to use their hands to tip the scales in their favor against free speech, but more importantly, against opening up people's minds to this insanity and how bad and dangerous it really is. But here's another one. Andrew Torba over on Gab posted, just so you know, part of their grand plan is a digital internet ID to totally destroy online anonymity so they can ruin your life when you name them. And I wrote to him basically saying, this is what Elon Musk will work with China to install here with Twitter. So remember, a part of what the whole big tech scam is trying to get our digital identity confirmed, right? They want a digital license so that you can't go online without signing in with your license, so that they know it's exactly you and you are who you say you are. But why is that dangerous? Everybody thinks at first, oh, that's not a bad idea. Then we at least know who we're talking to. Okay, I get it. That's fine. But then take it a step further. What happens when they want to bring in the social credit system, right? Well, then that'll be a heck of a lot easier if we're all on digital IDs. And then our digital IDs will be connected to everything that we say and do, whether it's online or in real person. And then that will be put into a database. And then that database will be used by the CIA and the NSA and the FBI and our own government to illegally spy on us and further subjugate us and manipulate us and use psychological warfare against us and try to manipulate us into believing their lies even further, because they are all corrupt. I mean, I've spent too many years doing this to not see it for what it is. Now, I'm not saying that every single person in the government is a corrupt person. I'm saying that the people who run government are corrupt. The people who run these agencies are corrupt. The federal law enforcement agencies are corrupted. The DOJ is corrupted. And it's illegitimate at this point. How is it legitimate? How do you steal an election and start installing your own criminally corrupt cohorts and expect we, the people, to sit back and go, oh yeah, this is a good thing? Well, it's not a good thing. It's a dangerous thing. But here's some other stories that I'm sure they'll tell us are misinformation, disinformation. Fusion GPS revealed to have pushed Russian collusion his story to numerous outlets. So think about it. What are we finding out with Durham? We're finding out that Hillary Clinton with the DNC worked with the intelligence agencies to frame a sitting president to try to get him pushed out of office. For what reason? Oh, because he was exposing their lies, their crimes, and their corruption. Oh. Well, I'm sure that's a danger to Homeland Security, right? For the people to know the truth about how criminally corrupt our government is and was. But here's another thing that's misinformation, disinformation, how these ballot drop boxes are high risk for ballot trafficking. and they'll be used to prey upon weak and vulnerable communities, says True the Vote founder. Well, of course. And that's how they stole the original one. 2,000 Mules is a documentary that's coming out in the next couple weeks from Dinesh D'Souza, which is going to show how thousands of mules, and mule is a term given to people who are ballot harvesters, illegally collecting multiple ballots and then shoving them and stuffing ballot boxes all across the country, but how there are thousands of examples of people going to ballot boxes, unsecure ballot boxes, by the way, and shoving hundreds or dozens of ballots into these boxes. And so they stole the election, right? They go, oh, it was 81 million votes. Yeah, we'll probably take about 20 million off for the ballot harvesting and the Dominion voting machines being fixed. And then you may get a real idea of how many people actually voted for Joe Biden. And then you'll actually see how many people voted for Trump, because it was all skewed and it was all rigged. But I guess it's dangerous for us to say these things, right? So, the way I look at it is we have some very tough times ahead. But let's just go into this. You guys know we started justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. If you guys like this show, please consider subscribing. Either hit subscribe on Rumble, where you're at. If you're watching this on Rumble, like here, you can go up here and hit subscribe. That helps me out. If you're on BitChute, you can hit subscribe right here, and that helps me out as well. But also, if you come over here to justinformednews.com, you can put your email address in and hit subscribe, and then you'll get an email notification as soon as these videos are posted, and you'll be on the email list so that anytime I need to get a message out to you guys, you can get that message directly. Also, informednews.com is the official news website where we get the majority of the information we're going to be looking at here today on this episode. So make sure you guys check that out. And today, the scripture of the day is from Psalm 119. We're still in Psalm 119. We're going to go through this part by part. And today we're in the third part of chapter 119, the longest chapter in the Bible. And it's a powerful, powerful chapter. But one of the quotes from the portion we'll be reading and looking into today in our God's Grace is Greater segment is this. Psalm 119, 23 through 24, though princes sit together speaking against me, your servant will think about your statutes. Your decrees are my delight and my counsel. So look, it's such a poignant piece of scripture to where we're going, what we're going through today. Though princes sit together speaking against us, your servants will delight or will think about your statutes. Your decrees are my delight and my counselors. So it's something to consider, and we're going to get into it in our God's Grace is Greater segment at the end, so stick around for that. And also, I just want to take a second to say thank you to Patriot Toner for sponsoring this episode. If you guys haven't tried them out, I know if you guys are running an office or you have anything that needs a print toner, these print toner cartridges for the big printing machines, the copy machines, you need to go try out Patriot Toner. And I'll tell you why. Because you could save half of what you'd spend at a big box store on toner cartridges, and at the same time, you can support a like-minded Patriot-owned small business. So if you guys want to do that, go to patriottoner.com and tell them Craig sent you for 30% off your first order. That's patriottoner.com. You can give them a call also at 888-341-3911. That's 888-341-3911. Patriot Toner, thank you for sponsoring this episode of Just Informed News. All right. So here we are. Dr. Anthony Fauci is admitting the pandemic phase of COVID is over. I guess so. Here he did an interview with NPR where he said this. He says, the interviewer asked the question, here we are. It's the end of April. It's the spring of 2022. How close are we to the end of the pandemic? Fauci was asked by host Judy Woodruff. Quote, Dr. Fauci said, we are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase, Fauci replied. Namely, we don't have 900,000 new infections a day and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hospitalizations and thousands of deaths. We are at a low level right now. So if you're saying, are we out of the pandemic phase in this country? We are. Oh, okay. Interesting. I guess we are. We're out of the pandemic, guys, because Fauci said so. Remember, Fauci is science. But then Sockeye, the Sockeye salmon here, told us all about how we're actually not out of it, saying COVID isn't over and the pandemic isn't over, right after Anthony Fauci said it was. Watch this exchange.
So there's no question that we're in a moment, a different moment in our fight against COVID. But we also know COVID isn't over and the pandemic isn't over.
Oh, So the pandemic isn't over. Well, that's interesting. But actually, wait, after she said that, then Fauci flips back. He now says the pandemic's not over. Oh, okay. So I guess it was over, then it wasn't over, now it is over. But hey, I mean, look, this is where we're at as a society, right? Pandemic's on, then it's off, then it's on, then it's off. It's really just going to be as soon as the midterm election gets here, then it's going to be really back on. You guys know that's coming. Of course, why wouldn't it? Speaking of pandemics, here we are. Panic buying grips China's capital as residents fear another Shanghai-esque lockdown. This is coming out of Beijing. Panic buying and hoarding has gripped China's capital city as fears of hard lockdown looms. Multiple sources reported empty shelves increasingly plague grocery stores and markets across Beijing as over 20 million residents rush to stock up on food and daily necessities, with growing concerns the capital will soon face the same fate as Shanghai. Oh, so the Chinese government began mass testing residents within Beijing's diplomatic district, Qiaoyang, on Monday, according to CNN, where a majority of coronavirus cases have surfaced. The government then announced its intention to test nearly all of Beijing's inhabitants on Tuesday. Yeah, so that's what they have planned for China. But here's a great write-up from and a report from Greg Reese about what the incoming famine is going to look like for us all. So I'm going to play this clip. Actually, play this clip right here. Watch this.
The term bread and circuses comes from an ancient Roman poet describing how the people are governed, not by excellence in public service, but by food and distractions, like a herd of livestock. Today's circuses can be found on Twitter, a reflection of the human herd's short attention span. Meaningless distractions to keep everyone calm while their food supply is being destroyed. While fools joke about Biden doing a horrible job, his administration is doing such an efficient job of destroying America that anyone running in 2024, if there is an election, will have to run on the Build Back Better platform. Starvation has been used as a weapon of mass destruction for years. In just a 2-year period, Stalin's communist government murdered over 3 million people in Ukraine by simply pulling the strings of bureaucracy, sanctions. The Ethiopian counterinsurgency burned crops and food stores, airily bombed food markets, and restricted trade. They then began a resettlement plan that killed at least 80,000 people with further starvation. The U.S. State Department murdered over 500,000 women and children in Iraq with starvation by sanctions. And this is exactly what is happening in America today. The Biden administration's sanctions against Russia are only succeeding at killing more innocent people all over the world by dramatically cutting down the worldwide food supply. There is already a significant wheat, fuel, and fertilizer shortage, which is obviously going to affect everything else, starting with fresh produce and livestock. But in order to completely collapse the food economy, they'll have to start destroying food packing plants as well, so that there is nothing left on the shelves for you to eat.
There have been confirmed over a dozen disabling accidents at food plants in the last month, over a dozen.
Absolutely, and we're talking about some really significant plants. The Taylor Farms facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by a fire last week. We've had 2 major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine and Warden, Washington that were completely gutted, which is happening at a time where we already have a potato shortage globally. You were talking about the onion supply at that Rio Fresh, but it's not just produce plants. Last month there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant out in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's impacting frozen food brands like Hot Pockets or Stouffer's, which maybe you might buy if you can't get fresh food from a warehouse that just exploded.
Those still satiated with their bread and circuses are soon going to start getting hungry. And it's because America is under siege, being destroyed from within by a corrupt government, while the people seek fairness on Twitter. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Yeah, I mean, again. InfoWars, terrible, terrible video player. I just cannot stress that enough. It is the worst one ever. But you saw it for yourself, right? Bread and circuses. Bread and circuses. Twitter is the big deal, right? We're all so concerned about Elon Musk and whether or not we'll have our Twitter accounts back as we are about to go through a major famine and have people rioting in the streets for food and all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure it'll all work out for the best, right? But here's what else they want to do with these lockdowns, right? They want to do this carbon tax, right? So here's another one from Greg Reese. We're going to go back-to-back Greg Reese reports. So with that being said, though, let's watch this report.
The most effective control technique deployed by the American media is to distract the audience. This is very easy to do because everyone takes the bait. But today's distractions are threatening our very lives. While people are busy discussing their opinions on he said, she said nonsense from Hollywood stars and celebrating the fact that one of the billionaires who made hundreds of millions off the COVID lockdowns just bought Twitter, the banker's agenda continues to move forward unobstructed. The World Economic Forum has made their intentions clear. You will own nothing and like it. And the best way to accomplish this is through more lockdowns, permanent lockdowns, with occasional breaks for good behavior. Just as China led the way in 2020, showing the world how efficiently a totalitarian regime can fight a fake pandemic, the rest of the world soon followed. Shanghai is now building cages around entire apartment buildings to keep people from escaping, an entire new method of government mass murder. America's version will be so much more cozy. World nations are beginning to adopt the carbon tax and cutting off the fuel supply, while announcing massive fuel shortages. In America, Gavin Newsom is leading the way by cutting off the water and power to Californians after years of creating the problem by turning off production. While facing a massive fertilizer shortage, Bill Gates owns the majority of farmland and wants you to eat nothing but genetically modified synthetic food products. And he marches forward, no matter how much you make fun of him on social media. And while we face an immediate shortage of fresh foods and staple items, over a dozen food processing plants have been destroyed in recent weeks. It may not be possible to see the entire picture from the level where we are at, but they are going to shut us down again. The very systems of government we believed were put in place to serve us are being used to kill us by billionaires and banks while they maximize their own profits. That much is clear. And as far as the ones perpetrating this human liquidation, what they can clearly see is that we will obey. We will put the mask on when we are told, and we will take it off when we are told. And we will celebrate that as a victory. They know that we will ignore their destruction of America so long as they feed us distractions to ruminate over on social media, just as they are doing right now. On January 20th of this year, the WHO submitted a proposal that would give the World Health Organization international authority over pandemic response, meaning no more recommendations, but de facto law. This proposal has been fast-tracked by Washington for consideration at the World Health Assembly this May. They want to make you stay inside your home and die quietly, peacefully, where no one notices. Many of you may doubt that they will get away with any of this, but our actions say differently. Our actions suggest that they can do it again. And so long as we have a voice on Twitter, once we are locked down in our homes again, we can complain of the food shortages, the rolling blackouts, and the cyber attacks. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to show those videos back to back, but they do draw quite a picture for us to understand the severity and the reality of what's going on here. They've made their calculations. They know we will submit. They know that we are easily manipulated and conditioned into these behaviors. They've used psychology and they've used manipulation. They've used incentivization. They've used all their tactics, their underhanded tactics to make this a reality in our world that we live in today. And unfortunately, the people that are in control, the illegitimate, corrupt government that is so supposedly the government that is in control here, has convinced us that they can get away with this stuff. Fauci the other day just went on TV. We did the whole story about it, where he was saying that the courts shouldn't have a say in the CDC's dictates. Constitution shouldn't play a role in a pandemic. I don't know, guys. It's looking pretty dark, right? But there is hope. Stick around at the end. We talk about the gospel and why, at the end of the day, there's something far greater than all of this, and it is the good news of God and Jesus Christ. So stick around for that. Quadruple vaxxed Kamala Harris catches COVID, along with a bunch of other people today. I just heard Maxine Waters has it now, and everybody's caught it. So you know what this is setting up. Everybody's catching COVID now. These are all people who have like been quadruple vaccinated, right? So then they're catching COVID, and you're like, huh. Whereas the people who didn't get the vaccine may have caught COVID once and haven't caught it since. Oh, interesting how that works. But at the end of the day here, you know, Kamala Harris getting COVID is just the setting the stage, right? They can look back and say, well, look, we all got COVID, so now we need more vaccines and more lockdowns. Because the vaccine, the fourth one just didn't work. We need a fifth and a sixth and a seventh booster until your whole immune system is decimated to the point where if you even like breathe in some dust, you're going to get a massive infection and die from it. That's what they want, at least. And then when they asked after Kamala Harris came out with her, proclamation of her COVID infection, they had this, COVID czar, whoever this idiot is at the White House, come out and talk about Joe Biden. They're like, well, will Joe Biden get it? And then it's like, watch this interaction. It's just hilarious.
President Biden gets this. Is it just a matter of time that the president could get COVID?
I wouldn't say it's just a matter of time, but of course it is possible that the president, like any other American, could get COVID. The bottom line is he is vaccinated and boosted. He is very well protected. He's got very good protocols around him to protect him from getting infected. But there is no 100% anything. And I think the key focus has got to be, we got to continue protecting the president. That's what the protocols around him are designed to do. Let me leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that one. Yeah, you could get it. It's amazing how he has like the best immune system ever, since every single person around him is magically getting COVID all of a sudden, and he just isn't. Maybe he's actually given a vaccine that works, unlike the American people. But the fact of the matter is that when you see this kind of exchange, you can tell very quickly what what their agenda is at the end of the day, right? It's, we need to get vaccines in every arm across the globe. Everybody needs the vaccine. Well, then comes this. China reports first case of H3N8 bird flu, 4-year-old boy infected in central Henan province. Yes, this is real. China reported its first case of the H3N8 bird flu on Tuesday. According to Reuters, a 4-year-old boy from the central Henan province developed a fever and symptoms on April 5th after coming in contact with chickens raised at his residence. 4-year-old boy from central Henan province found to have been infected with the variant after developing a fever and other symptoms. So now, bird flu's coming back. That's going to be the next pandemic. And guess what's convenient about the bird flu? Talking about destroying our food supplies. Well, I guess now we can just murder all the chickens and just throw them in the dumpster like they do in China, where they throw out all the food to starve the people intentionally, because China certainly has an overpopulation problem, and they are certainly dealing with it by mass starving their population and locking them in their homes until they're so depressed that they jump out of their coffin apartments to their deaths. So, when this shows up on our shores, of course it surely will, you'll see all of the mass formation psychosis reactivated, and people will be going crazy telling us about the new bird flu that's going to kill us all, that we have to take a new vaccine for, that we have to start new lockdowns for, and that conveniently is going to cause mail-in voting to be mandatory in all elections right before the midterm election. So I really pray that it won't be one of those I told you so moments. But hey, as we look at this story, China is saying it will use EMP weapon as part of military's new blitzkrieg strategy. Well, this is actually being reported on as what people familiar with the plans are saying, experts, right? And that makes sense. The EMP attack is the most effective and least damaging to the actual infrastructure in reality. If they were to make a move on Taiwan, I could see it happening exactly this way. They launch an EMP weapon that blows up, knocks out the entire grid for Taiwan, as the entire country is pretty small. It's an island. And then they just blitzkrieg the heck out of it. And they, have been doing these practice runs in Shanghai on how logistically you lock down 30 million people and how you lock 30 million people into their coffin apartments, and then how you restrict the food and only give food to the people that you want to live, like the Communist Party's family and friends and supporters. And then if you're not as strong in your faith with the Communist Party, well, guess what? Your food might not be showing up to your apartment that's been fenced in and that you've been welded inside of. Yeah, that's what they want to bring to America. And here you are, Goya CEO, sounding the alarm on the coming food crisis, which is exactly what we just went through in that video from Greg Reese. But he's saying we are on the precipice of a global food crisis. God created humanity. Humanity has created every way to destroy itself, from nuclear to biological to chemical. But now we've waged a war. We've weaponized food. In the Ukraine, between the Ukraine and Russia, they represent 50% of the world's production of fertilizer, 30% of wheat, 20% of corn, 2.5 million acres of sunflowers, and other food and minerals. We're going to have to tighten our belt and consume less. We've gone from oil independence to oil dependence. We've given up that position to have our oil at cost. When we bring in stuff from, let's say, Thailand, coconut water, we're paying 10 times the freight we usually pay. The biggest component in food and anything is transportation. The transportation has skyrocketed because we've given up our independence. And it goes on. If you want to read that, all the articles and everything that I talk about in this show will be linked below this video. But, look, you can see it here for yourself. We've already talked about it. It's the high cost of fuel is causing transportation to go through the roof, which is making food less affordable. I know, me personally, okay, this is just, I buy the same thing at the store every week. I've been on a diet for quite some time now. I'm very regimented with what I eat. I try to stay physically fit and healthy. I try to exercise every day. I try to eat very healthy, but eat, kind of the same regimented stuff every day. So I'm not out there buying a bunch of random stuff, not really impulse buying, not all that. But every week I go to the grocery store, the bill goes up by $50 at least, if not $100. And I'm not kidding. And you probably know this too, because you're probably going to the grocery every week as well. And you may have noticed that every week you go back to that grocery to get stocked up. Well, look at that. My bill's gone up another 20%, another 30%, another 50%. And and they're telling us, oh, it's only 8% inflation. Yeah, BS. It's not 8% inflation. It's probably way higher than that. And I know that because I've been paying for things. Speaking of which, if you'd like to make a donation, I guess now's better time than ever to make a shameless plug for that. Look, if you guys want to support this channel and keep this channel going, I depend on your support. You can come here to justinformednews.com. There's a link below. Click the donate button right here, or you could hit support. It takes you to the same place. And then you come here, you can make a one-time, or you can make a monthly, or you can make an annual donation. I really appreciate it, however that comes. Also, there are links to other ways you can support the channel. There's also crypto addresses if you want to make a donation of cryptocurrency, if that's what you can do. I know a lot of you guys asked for that, so I put that on there. There's a Cash App link, whatever it is. If you want to support this, but my biggest favor of all of you to ask is consider doing a monthly donation. Right? For about $10 a month, 17, whatever, 45, or whatever you can afford, you can put it in here, a custom amount. You can make a monthly donation that keeps this channel alive. And look, I only say it not because of, inflation and everything, which obviously that's going to affect it, but you guys are what keep this channel alive. So if you want to support it, please feel, if you feel called to do it, please do. If you can't afford to do it, please do. Thank you to everybody who does support it. But if you do sign up to donate monthly, that helps me out more than you could ever imagine, considering all the things that go into making this channel on a daily basis. It's a lot of work, a lot of equipment, a lot of expenses. So please consider making a donation. I really appreciate it. But let's get into the next story here. Republicans give Kevin McCarthy standing ovation as he repels media and Democrats. Oh, yes, he's a hero. House Republicans gave leader Kevin McCarthy a standing ovation on Wednesday as he continues to fight off media and Democrats ahead of the pivotal midterms. Oh, wow. This is such a joke, this piece. Probably written by some, neocon-loving, rhino-loving idiot over at Breitbart, talking about how, oh, they just welcome him back with open arms. Again, these are the same Republican idiots, the traitors, the corrupt, feckless, spineless cowards in Congress who are giving standing ovation to President Zelensky, the Ukrainian Paddington Bear, as he, told us that we need to go to nuclear war with Russia for his corrupt regime to stay in power. It's like Kevin McCarthy is a weak loser who is basically a rhino in disguise. I mean, here's another story. Steve King, former Representative Steve King, reveals what really goes on Capitol Hill. McCarthy is worshipped. The New York Times, McCarthy worshipped the New York Times and is forcing GOP members to sell out to globalists. Here it is. He says, quote, "The New York Times is McCarthy's Bible," King told the Gateway Pundit in an exclusive interview. "McCarthy more or less worshipped the New York Times. The New York Times reporter to me, he said the New York Times would not make a mistake. They are professionals. They wouldn't make a mistake even in punctuation. Now here we are. The New York Times turned around and laid this on him." So look, the guy loves the New York Times, and then so they knew where to hit him, right? The reason this whole thing went through the New York Times, where they leaked the conversation of him basically saying, yes, Trump should resign after the hoax impeachment was put out on him, is because Kevin McCarthy is a rhino traitor to the pub party at large. But they're going to, as I said in yesterday's video, it's amazing to me. The two least popular people in the GOP are Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell. And they're the two people who are in charge. They don't represent the American people. They represent special interests, big corporations, the globalists. They are basically they're a carbon copy of the Democrats, just with a different color and a different party behind their name. Tucker Carlson kind of puts it clearly. I'm going to play a clip from his show where he called McCarthy a puppet of the Democratic Party. Here, I'm going to play a clip from his show, just a little bit of it, and then you guys can judge for yourself.
We're being slightly unfair in that analysis. We do not mean, certainly, to who favor censorship for political ends. Republican leaders support it too. In a phone call reported today by the New York Times, for example, Congressman Kevin McCarthy of California told his close friend Liz Cheney that he hoped the social media companies would censor more conservative Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump, the sitting president, had already been silenced by those companies, but McCarthy wanted the tech oligarchs to do more, to force disobedient lawmakers off the internet. Quote, "Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too?" Those are the tape-recorded words of Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a man who in private turns out sounds like an MSNBC contributor. And yet, unless conservatives get their act together right away, Kevin McCarthy or one of his highly liberal allies like Elise Stefanik is very likely to be Speaker of the House in January. That would mean we will have a Republican Congress led by a puppet of the Democratic Party. So you wouldn't know any of this unless it was leaked. And you can start to see why the people in charge oppose transparency and fervently support censorship on both sides. Why? Because the more you know about them, the less satisfied you're likely to become with their leadership.
Yep. He pretty much hits the nail on the head there. I can't put it better myself. That's what Kevin McCarthy is. That's what he represents. And I think that's sad for everyone involved. So a few other stories we're going to get into here. We've talked about Elon Musk. They just came out with this. Breaking: Project Veritas released leaked audio of Twitter meeting following Elon Musk's purchase. It's hilarious. Here's a little portion of it. I think this is...
Elon made it clear in public that a large part of the reason he bought the platform was because of our moderation policies and disagreements in how we deal with health. This puts Twitter service and trust and safety, as well as anybody who cares about health on the platform, in a very difficult position.
I believe Twitter grows as a service, allows for more people to use the product and have a better experience because we're able to make the conversation on Twitter be safe, because we have built tools, processes for people to be able to feel safe and control their experiences. I believe that there is a lot of work we have to do to continue making that better. Sometimes that means more thoughtful moderation. Sometimes that means making things simpler. Sometimes that means changing product incentives to be able to solve problems through products sometimes instead of policies.
Oh, yeah. Yep. There's the Indian native, CEO of Twitter talking about how We have to make it safe for people to speak here. See, this is how dangerous and slippery the slope is. And Google, Zach Voorhees exposed this a while ago, years ago, when he did that whistleblower leak of all those documents that came out, and he showed us that the internal documents at Google were basically putting out the fact that they favored the European free expression model over the U.S. free speech model. Now the tech companies have gone full blown with it, to the point where it has nothing to do with our right to speak freely. It has everything to do with them controlling the conversation so that the people that support their narrative, their agenda, their political ideology feel safe to talk. What does that mean? That means that these people are authoritarians. They want to usher in a new age of destructive, authoritarianism. I don't know how else to put it, right? Here we are. Gosh, you can't make this stuff up. Bloomberg. Disney targeted by QAnon believers using meme stock tactics. Group promotes lies about company financial CEO arrest. Some try to influence the stock price on forums. Here we are. For weeks now, followers of the fringe group QAnon have been spinning theories and falsehoods about Walt Disney Company online, whipping up a frenzy of negative sentiment against one of America's best-known corporations. Yeah, what? Yeah, it's QAnon, man. Don't you get it? It's QAnon conspiracy theorists are the reason why people hate Disney now, right? It couldn't have anything to do with them literally saying in their own internal, messaging that they have a not at all secret queer and gay agenda for your children. No, has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with those darn pesky QAnon conspiracy theorists spreading their lies about, the fact that Disney has cruises that go to Epstein Island. Well, wait, that's not actually a lie. That's actually true. They do that. Or the fact that Disney covers up the fact that their employees are involved in massive, allegations of, sexually assaulting children. No. It's not that they've subliminally been messaging us and generations of our youth with this sexualization. I mean, I always say this, like, look at any of the people that went in to Disney and how they are today. Look at Britney Spears when she was in that, whatever that is, the kids group or whatever it is, the original Disney show that she was on with a bunch of other famous people now. I mean, she's like an innocent little girl. And then today she's like a psychotic, crazy person who is sexualized and demonically driven. But then you go even further. There are other people. Look at, I don't know the names of all these people, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Christina Aguilera, I think she was in the original one. Then look at what she did. Miley Cyrus is a great example of like taking this Hannah Montana, and all of a sudden now she's like literally some sort of sex demon from hell. And it's like, it's how our country's going. Here, conservative ARP, I love this story. Alternative AMAC is overwhelming woke Disney execs with tens of thousands of phone calls and emails. So I think this is where the Bloomberg article originated from, was the fact that Disney's being overwhelmed by these phone calls from AMAC. But the fact of the matter is they deserve it, because they're a bunch of grooming pedophile supporting criminals who've literally damaged an entire generation of children beyond repair at this point. The only way that can be repaired is with God, because God can heal all things and do all things. But I pray that we'll get them healing they need. DeSantis is warning that Democrats fleeing California's dumpster fire will move to Florida and attempt to ruin state with leftist policies. Well, let me tell you, as a guy who lives out in California, let me just say, yes, you're 100% right. Not only have they ruined, because I'm lucky, I live in a more conservative part of California, let's just say, still wildly liberal when it comes to the policies, and especially the state laws and state enforcement of all this garbage that they try to shove down your throat here, and the taxes. Not to mention, talk about, you guys want to make a donation, you could help me. Tax season just happened, and you know how damning that can be for anyone, especially when you're out here in California paying so many taxes for so many things. But here it is. I mean, he's 100% right. They will go to Florida and will ruin it by voting in Democrats, and they'll do the exact same thing. And then they'll just go to the next place and ruin it, because these people are like, they're like a virus. Like, and I hate to call people, to dehumanize them in such a way, but it's like their political ideology is a virus, and they catch it, and then they go and they destroy it. They destroy whatever host is that they're on, and then they go to the next thing and destroy that, and they just keep, and they don't even know they have it, or they think that it's not their fault. It's that meme. There's like a meme of the guy's riding the bicycle, right? And he's like, and he sticks a stick in the wheel and he falls over and he just blames someone else or anything else other than the fact that he's the one who did it to himself. So that's, I think, ultimately what we're seeing. And you know, good on DeSantis for at least calling it out. Another story here, Joe Biden shaking hands with Gage Grosskreutz, the felon who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse and lied about carrying an illegal firearm. This actually happened not too long ago on April 23rd. So it was about a week ago. He was speaking in Portland. Gage Grosskreutz was there. And of course, Joe Biden went and shook his hand. Now, what I see this as, and other people have seen it as, this is Biden giving the green light to Antifa for the upcoming midterm election and BLM to go psycho and try to extort and intimidate the population into complying with their, psychotic agenda and destructive agenda. And the thing is, too, when they have these enforcers out in the street, these Antifa and BLM, lunatics who are psychotically driven in a lot of cases, that you have to understand that it's not just about intimidating the population as a whole. It's about creating a distraction so they can do things behind the scenes that nobody notices. I mean, part of the reason why Antifa was so successful in helping facilitate the steal in 2020 was because they created so much chaos and discord that they were able to truck in ballots, 288,000 ballots at a time, and dump them in these voting centers because people were so worried about focusing on everything else but the voting, because that was a part of the orchestrated distraction that was amplified by the fake news, and it was put forth on the American people against our will. Here we are. Here's another one talking about crazy things. NASCAR drivers ordered to complete sensitivity training after posting Family Guy Asian meme. So apparently here, Danny Hamlin was ordered to do sensitivity training because he posted an anti-white meme, right? The meme itself is basically a tweet of... so the Asian thing is, I don't know what meme he actually put up, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't even matter what the meme was at this point. Or here, we can watch it if you want.
Signal I need to cut across 8 lanes. None? I turn now. Good luck, everybody else.
So it's funny because it's okay for Family Guy to air this on TBS every day, right? And then Danny Hamlin does it as a joke, and it's like, oh, you need sensitivity training. It's like, okay. Yeah, NASCAR's gone woke. Speaking of racists, real racists actually here. Black boys holding anti-CRT signs are extra sick and tantamount to child abuse. So again, this is like how it all works, right? You see these children here who are holding anti-CRT signs because it is racist, obviously, and it's going to affect their whole lives going forward. But you see racists like Joy Reid every night with this massive platform who get up there and talk about how, oh, this is sick and child abuse for them to hold a sign. It's like, lady, do you understand that? Oh, yes, you do understand that CRT is racist, and you are a racist. Joy Reid is a despicable, loathsome, ugly, moronic racist. That's the truth. I don't care if you can quote me on that and send it to her and put it, and she can play it on her show for all I care. Because at the end of the day, these people are morons. I don't listen to them. I don't watch them. I only see these reports, and I report it to you because I think it's important to understand what the rest of the world's looking at. That brings us to this story. A great piece by Revolver talking about how the press is running away. While the press runs away, Americans live live under a deadly reign of BLM terror. And this is so true, right? It gives us all these examples in the show here in this article about how there's all of this, the way that the media reports on these attacks that are happening, that are BLM activists who are black supremacists, who are basically want to kill all white people in a lot of cases, and they've committed terrorist attacks to affect that end and that outcome, and they're radicalized by BLM. These and you're not seeing any of this on our side, right? You're not seeing any of the all the stuff that was manufactured. We understand that, the Pizzagate guy who went into Comet Ping Pong and all that stuff, and they tried to tie that to QAnon. This is totally different. We're having a massive outbreak of domestic terror attacks being brought on by racist BLM loving lunatics who hate white people. And people like Joy Reid are facilitating this psychosis and helping it, grow and metastasize throughout our society because they have nothing. They have no moral conscience. They are completely devoid of any, ability to understand the damage that they create, or they just are so callous that they could care less. But, it talks about, the guy, Frank James, who shot 10 people on a subway, which a lot of people say that didn't even happen. That was some false flag. I don't even know. But it goes through in this story. When you scroll down, it talks about, here's one that was great. It says, how far into the article do papers mention a murderer's race? Well, if they're black, 30% of the time, it's about 70% into the article is when you're going to see them say that they're a black person. But if they're white, in the first 10 to 20% of the article, that's what they're going to lead with. Again, here's another thing. After George Floyd's murder, did papers change when they mentioned race? Before, they would mention race. After, and see the difference here for black people, it was after. They don't mention the race at all. But if the person's white after George Floyd, yeah, we're going to tell you all about that white supremacist and what they did. Here's a great meme. It says, how can you ignore gun violence in America? A shooter just massacred a dozen people. It says he was black, and it goes, oh, never mind. But then it goes into some other attacks that happened, the Monsey Hanukkah stabbing, 2020 Boogaloo killings, talks about January 6th briefly, just to say that it's, kind of how it was portrayed in the media. And talks about the BLM guy who tried to assassinate the mayoral candidate in Louisville. But it says this in closing. It says, all of this is ignoring the far larger elephant in the room. In summer 2020, literally dozens of U.S. cities were convulsed by BLM-motivated riots, which killed dozens, destroyed thousands of businesses, and likely caused far more terror than all white supremacist attacks combined in the past half century. Even now, every city government in America lives in fear that should something go wrong while its police arrest someone, their city could be gutted by looting, arson, and destruction while every institution lines up to justify the violence. What do you think a business owner in any American city fears more? That a white supremacy will bomb his shop, or that a mostly peaceful BLM protest will break out nearby? A press that not only invents a fake menace of white supremacy, but also colludes to hide the real terror threat in the United States is not a press looking out for your interests. If you need any additional proof that the American press hates you and wants you dead, this is it. They hate us. They want white people dead. I said it. I'm not going to back away from it, because what else can you conclude when racists like Joy Reid and all the MSNBC anchors and all the CNN liars and all the rest of the fake news line up every day? They hide the fact of the motivations behind certain people based on their race, but then they amplify and exaggerate the motivations of other people based on their race. They want to get rid of all white people, it seems. Oh, and then they're going to take that clip and they're going to say, oh, look, he's a paranoid conspiracy theorist, QAnon conspiracy theorist. It's like, no, statistically, I'm right on this, and if you don't like that, you can pound sand because it's the truth. But it goes even further than that. Looking at the evil that exists in this world, you can see one example of the actual demonic stuff that's going on here. Let me just play this clip for you, okay? So there's a person, and I can't even get into the irony of this, but anyway, there's a person who is named Megan Fox, apparently. You guys probably know her. If you don't, she's a famous actress and who knows what else. She's married, I guess, to a man named Machine Gun Kelly, who apparently is a rapper, which the irony of that name is hilarious because the leftists apparently love a guy named Machine Gun Kelly, but they hate machine guns because guns are evil. But when you name yourself Machine Gun Kelly and you rap about killing people with guns and dealing drugs and doing violence, somehow that's good. But then this is what you have to know. Guys, I'm gonna play this clip, okay? They tell us that the demonic, satanically driven evil is just a figment of our imagination, right? It doesn't exist. It's not true. Well, apparently, when you watch this interview, Megan Fox is admitting to the satanic ritualism that her and her boyfriend or husband, Machine Gun Kelly, get into. And this is not just them. This is a lot of Hollywood. These are the people who they prop up and say are the celebrities. They are demonically driven, satanic, and this is evil. Watch this.
I guess drink each other's blood might mislead people, or like people are imagining us with like goblets and we're like Game of Thrones drinking each other's blood. It's just a few drops, but yes, we do consume each other's blood on occasion for ritual purposes. only. It is used for a reason, and it is controlled where it's like, let's shed a few drops of blood and each drink it. He's much more haphazard and hectic and chaotic, where he's willing to just like cut his chest open with broken glass and be like, take my soul, let me bleed on you. It doesn't not happen, let me tell you. Maybe not exactly like that, but a version of that has happened many times.
Wow. So, and we're supposed to believe that they're not demonically driven, satanic, people. Cutting yourself open and draining your blood on your spouse and telling them to take your soul sounds really, really fine. But then you hear the key word there. She said it's ritualistic. Well, the ritualism that they involve themselves in is of the devil. It's demonic in nature, and that's why they are promoted and amplified by the evil that exists in this world. It's a fallen world, folks, and if you don't believe the evil exists, there's just a little taste of them just telling it. They're trying to mainstream this evil. But we stand against that evil, and I'm going to share a verse out of the Bible. This is our God's Grace is Greater segment, and I had to go right into this because for all that negative stuff, all the bad news that we just went over, there is good news. And there is good news that supersedes everything we just talked about. All the evil, all the dreadful, nightmarish existence that seems to be a day-to-day thing for us to have to experience. All of that, it can all go away. How? By turning your life over to Jesus Christ. But today we're going to look back at Psalm 119, and we're going to talk about what it means to understand how to overcome the evil of this world better, right? What are we called to do? And we're in the third section of chapter 119, Gimel. And I want to share these words with you. This is 17 through 24 in Psalm 119. It says, Deal generously with your servant so that I might live. Then I will keep your word. Open my eyes so that I may contemplate wonderful things from your instruction. I am a stranger on earth. Do not hide your commands from me. I am continually overcome with longing for your judgments. You rebuke the proud, the ones under a curse, who wander from your commands. Take insult and contempt away from me, for I have kept your decrees. Though princes sit together speaking against me, your servant will think about your statutes. Your decrees are my delight and my counsel. So, sharing this verse and understanding it goes right in glove in hand with what we've been talking about the last few sections from this same chapter, where it talks about holding ourselves to following God's commands in this world, right? But then it talks about a few things that I wanted to bring up, right? It says, you rebuke the proud. God rebukes the proud. The ones under a curse, right? Who wander from your commands. That's what it says. Now remember, what we just saw was an example of those who have wandered from his commands. Those who are under a curse and living inside of it. Those who are demonically driven and focused entirely of what is of this world, on what is of this world. They have no desire to look to God, look to the ultimate higher power to understand how they can find discernment and wisdom and happiness and fulfillment and the ability to help others. But what do we say? That even though the world, it says, the next line says, though princes sit together speaking against me, could say us, right? Your servant will think about your statutes. Your decrees are my delight and my counselors. So remember, in this fallen world, as we look around ourselves and we realize that not only have many walked away and wandered away from the commands of God and don't take it seriously and live under a curse, and even though the princes, the powers that be, the presidents, the leaders, the institutional leaders, even though they speak against us, we will delight in the Lord because we look to him for guidance. We look to him for understanding. We look to him for wisdom and strength and courage and the things we need to overcome all the evil that exists in this world. So what we ask God openly with an open heart is that he helps us to stay strong in our faith. He helps us to find more ways to honor him in our lives, helps us find ways to overcome our shortcomings, whether it's our addiction or our anger or our judgment or whatever it is, sadness, depression, anxiety. God can help us overcome it all. We just have to go to him in prayer and open our hearts and then go into the Bible, right? Read through his commands. Read through his precepts. Let him be your counselor. Let the words of God that he's given to us to study and understand be what counsel and advise you on how to live your life in a good way, so that you can not only honor God, but you can live a life that is righteous and that is going to put us on the track toward being able to spend eternal salvation in heaven from the gift that was given. The eternal salvation given through the sacrifice made on the cross. And all we have to do is turn our lives over to God and say, and with open arms, proclaim his glory and live by his commands. It's as simple as it is. But if you wander away from God, it's going to be a pretty hot eternity for you. So just remember that no matter how much evil exists in this world, we must follow and focus on God's decrees and let him counsel us through his wisdom in the scripture that he's given us, through the prayer and meditation that we can do on our own, and through the fellowship we can share with our family and friends. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. So I want to say thank you guys for watching. We're going to end it with a prayer, and that's it. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for all your many blessings, Lord. Thank you for continuing to show us the way forward. I pray that for all those out there who are lost, who feel like they're living under a curse, who feel like their lives need to be repointed in your direction, to be turned back to you. I pray you give them the strength and the courage and wisdom to understand how to do it, to know where to look to find the answers, and to know how you can help them in your way in their lives. And we pray for all those who are lost and who need to find their way back to you, even those who are engaged in the most evil things. We pray that somehow, some way, Lord, that their hearts are changed and that they decide to do the right thing and that they decide to come back to you and that they decide to turn their lives over to you. But until that day, Lord, we thank you for this day and every day, and most of all, our eternal salvation. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Yeah. That's pretty much it. So make sure you like, share, subscribe. Again, if you want to donate, it helps me out big time. I really appreciate it. But with that being said, make sure to tune in tomorrow night. We have another great show. That's it for me, though. Thanks for watching Just Informed News. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.